What's up, everybody? What's going on? Pastor Joshua Duffy here. You may be thinking, hey, this is supposed to be, One Love HTX. What's going on? Daniel was just I think a a bit, there it is, under the weather, had a nagging cough. So we're kind of flipping the script. I'm going to do a deep dive that is upon my heart today, and then we'll pick back up with our normal scheduled insanity. So I want to remind you, supporting One Love HTX is a valuable and good and faithful use of resources that you may have available to donate to a 501c3, such as One Love HTX. They have some great stuff planned, and more on that in the near future. Want to also remind you, check out westcliff.org. A ton of great content there that can certainly serve as personal devotional content, micro church, small group kind of stuff. And if you're like, hey, that's a great video, I have no idea what to say around it, we've even thought of that. Isn't that great? So there's actually like already attachments that you can click on that will then tell you what to ask a room full of people that are all staring at you after you showed a video from westcliff.org. So check all that out. Westcliff is also jumping on X. That's right. That's right. We're in the wild, wild west of social media, also known as X. So there'll be more of that to get out there. And of course, we haven't talked a lot about it. I have put out a book. Check that out. The American Christian and the Religion of the New Roman Empire. Started it about 3 years ago. It was a wild ride in getting it done, but finished it. It's out. And if you want some, semi-controversial reading material, there it is. Yeah. Also, if you're looking for a church home, plchouston.org. plchouston.org. Great church. And we're actually diving into, over the next several weeks, just kind of what's going on in the Middle East and kind of how to think through Islam and Judaism, and what's going on in Palestine, what's going on with Israel and Palestine, what's up with Hamas. So there's a lot to process there, and there's no shortage of opinions. And when things kind of hit a certain level, I always typically just feel led to just kind of dive right into it. So if you're looking for a church home and any of that kind of topically interests you, come check us out. Visit us online, certainly. We're on YouTube, we're on Facebook, Pilgrim Church Houston, website, plchouston.org. We'd love to have you, or live and in person if you happen to be in Houston. So there it is. That's all my obligatory announcements. I wanted to throw something at you that may be a little bit unusual, some things that you may not have known at the time of Jesus. There's some writings that are incredibly old within Judaism, and I wanted to reference one of them and some of the insights that it offers and what makes Jesus such a unique figure in all of this. And I'm going to read off of a particular document, and I'll be honest with you, I like prepare a lot of, for lack of a better way of saying it, like documents over the years, 8-9 years, when I'm topically getting ready for sermons and I want to start kind of coalescing information and pulling it and tightening it. And unfortunately, sometimes as I'm pulling together information, I don't always have written down where I got it from. So, and it's not like in church I'm reading it verbatim, but I'm just trying to learn and grow and stretch myself and learn different things. So I can't tell you where I got this from. So I'm sorry in advance. But this is a reference to a particular writing entitled Shabbat 31a. I think the full title of it, so to speak, is Tractate Shabbat, page 31a. Okay, or you could cite it as Shabbat 31a, and it says the following. There's a story about a Gentile convert who mockingly approaches Rabbi Shammai, saying, I'll convert to Judaism if you can explain the entire Torah while I stand on one foot. Rabbi Shammai responded by beating him with his ruler, literally a builder's cubit. The story goes on to say that the same guy went to Hillel. Who's Hillel? That's another rabbi, with the same mocking question. Hillel responded, that which is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. That is the whole Torah. The rest is commentary. Now go and learn. Number one, you may have noticed the difference in the response. Okay, one was like, "Hey, Rabbi Shammai, I'm going to stand on one foot, okay, and explain the whole of the entire Torah to me." And Rabbi Shammai's response was basically like, "Oh, that's a nice question. How about I beat you?" I mean, I have to admit, what a response. I mean, because, there's, whether it's like a real story or it's just an account or someone came up with it just to describe the differences in these two men, I'm trying to imagine somebody kind of mockingly coming up to this rabbi and standing on one foot, uh, if you can, explain the entire Torah while I stand on one foot, and then just getting the mess beat out of them. I don't know why I think that's funny. I could just see it. I don't know. Maybe that's why it's like, what an answer, right? Now, here's what's interesting is then to explain Hillel, the other rabbi, he does the same thing. He approaches, as I said earlier, and he goes, that which is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. That is the whole of the Torah. Now, I want you to just hit pause if you didn't catch it, because these are two of the big time players, okay, in and around the time of Jesus. There's like the house of Shammai and the house of Hillel teaching. And when people were trying to figure out how to apply the law, these are like the gravitational pull. There's and the story that I read to you, whether it's real or whether somebody came up with it as an anecdote or what have you, to understand the nature of these two different men, it tended to pull people either to the side of Shammai, which you could argue is maybe legalistic and less grace-filled with the ruler, or the builder's cubit, or to the other side, which has a degree of reflection and humanity and kind of heart and all that kind of stuff. Well, at the time of Jesus, those are basically the two ends of the spectrum with which people would try to process the law and applying God's law to their lives. Now, so we're clear, by this time, you've moved from the 10 Commandments. Okay. You've gone from 10 to basically between the oral tradition and the ceremonial laws and everything else. It's up to 613. Okay. And I think it's fair to say that the heart behind the 613 was all dedicated to keeping people from breaking the 10 and being faithful. Now, why would people be so motivated to go to that level, in theory, to not break the 10? Well, at this point in the history, the Jews are living in a police state of the Roman Empire. And prior to that, the northern kingdom was taken over viciously by the Assyrians. That's 10 of the tribes, considered the 10 lost tribes. And then the two southern tribes, tribe of Benjamin and Judah, they would be taken over by Babylon in the way that we would conceptualize as Christians within the Old Testament. So these are these horrific experiences, and people are wanting to be in a better place with God, honor God, see God, rescue and deliver them, and do what God had done before through David, do what God had done before with Moses. So it's probably from a good place, or at least it started out that way. But the problem is by the time Jesus shows up, the law is the point, and it's completely missing the heart. Okay. So they have these two schools of thought now at this point, one end of the spectrum or the other. That's one aspect. But if you notice, it may not have caught it on the surface, but really and truly, Shammai and Hillel, the way that they're depicted in this story, are both dealing with motivation. So they don't really, they both in their own way don't answer the man's question actually on that man's terms, the way that he wants them to answer the question. So the first one, Shammai, it's like, you're not really interested in knowing the answer to your question, because the conditions that you've put in place for me to answer your question suggests you're not really interested in knowing anything I have to say. You want to play gotcha. So what is Shammai looking at the heart and the intent and the motivation of this man is like, oh, you want to play gotcha? Here's my ruler's cubit, my builder's cubit. Let's play gotcha. And I'm going to beat the mess out of you. But the man goes then to Hillel, right? And do not do to your fellow. That is the whole Torah, right? That which is hateful to you, do not do to your fellow. If you caught it, there's just a glimpse of, right? Love your neighbor as yourself. Catch that? I mean, it's different, but there's some similarities, okay? And he's summarizing the whole thing. So the whole of the rest of commentary is just commentary, right? So this is what's crazy with Jesus is when he comes along, you go from, really only one instruction, which is like, don't eat from that tree. And that happens, right? Then it goes to 10 commandments. Try doing this. Can't do it. Okay. Then it is blown up into 613, right? Laws, customs, everything else. And then Jesus gets hit with a similar question. And Jesus is like, hey, the law and the prophets rest on this. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and mind. Love your neighbor as yourself. Boom. 613 goes past 10, drops it down to 2. Pretty cool. So I want to give you that backdrop of what's happening, because I think it starts to make a lot of sense regarding the incredible talk, the greatest sermon ever that Jesus gave. Okay, and I'm going to read some of that out of the scriptures here. Matthew 5, chapter 5, chapter 6, and chapter 7 are all one message. Okay. So you got to be careful. Just so you know, I think it's really helpful to read it all together in context, because if you pick little pieces out of it, man, you can get off track in a hurry, potentially. And it's good to know that that's all actually one sermon, is those 3 chapters. Okay, it's helpful. But what I want you to catch, if you can imagine, Jesus is speaking to a crowd that is on all ends of the spectrum, Shammai and Hillel. Okay. The super harsh, legalistic, draw the line, don't waste my time, zealous for it. Then you have the other end that may be more reflective in heart and, you know, treat someone as you'd want to be treated side of it. And there's that. Then there's probably or potentially people of other backgrounds, right? They could be Greeks or what have you, that they've just heard about this guy and they got to see it. They got to hear him for themselves. Um, and they don't know where they're at on it, right? Other people who may have had a history in their faith and have walked away from it, and they're tax collectors, sinners, who knows, right? Compromised. So you have all of that, probably even at a distance, teachers of the law who want to maybe catch Jesus and saying something he shouldn't. But all of that being put into place is fascinating because it sets the stage for this talk that Jesus would give. And I'm only going to read, let's see here, just a portion of it, because it really starts to set up, just the degree of like Jesus's heart. And I want to point out to you kind of the interesting conflict that I think he sets up for all that were listening. Okay. Here's chapter 5. Now, when he saw the crowds, he went up to the mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him, and he began to teach them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are you when people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven, for in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled by men. You are the light of the world. A city on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on a stand, and it gives light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before men, that they may see your good deeds and praise your Father in heaven. Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets. I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. I tell you the truth. Until heaven and earth disappear, not the smallest letter, not the least stroke of a pen, will by any means disappear from the law until everything is accomplished. Anyone who breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches others to do the same will be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever practices and teaches these commands will be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I tell you that unless your righteousness surpasses that of the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, you will certainly not enter the kingdom of heaven. You have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not murder, and anyone who murders will be subject to judgment. But I tell you that anyone who is angry with his brother will be subject to judgment. Again, anyone who says to his brother, Rakah, is answerable to the Sanhedrin. But anyone who says, you fool, will be in danger of the fire of hell. Therefore, if you're offering your gift to the altar, and there remember that your brother has something against you, leave your gift there in front of the altar. First go and be reconciled to your brother. Then come and offer your gift. Settle matters quickly with your adversary who is taking you in court. Do it while you are still with him on the way, or he may hand you over to the judge, and the judge may hand you over to the officer, and you may be thrown into prison. I tell you the truth, you will not get out until you have paid the last penny. You have heard that it was said, do not commit adultery, but I tell you that anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has committed adultery with her in his heart. If your right eye causes you to sin, gouge it out and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to be thrown into hell. And if your right hand causes you to sin, cut it off and throw it away. It is better for you to lose one part of your body than for your whole body to go into hell. It has been said, anyone who divorces his wife must give her a certificate of divorce. But I tell you that anyone who divorces his wife, except for marital unfaithfulness, causes her to become an adulteress. And anyone who marries the divorced woman commits adultery. Again, you have heard that it was said to the people long ago, do not break your oath, but keep the oaths you have made to the Lord. But I tell you, do not swear at all, either by heaven, for it is the God's throne, or by the earth, for it is the footstool, or by Jerusalem, for it is the city of the great king. And do not swear by your head, for you cannot make even one hair white or black. Simply let your yes be yes and your no, no. Anything beyond this comes from the evil one. You have heard that it was said, eye for eye and tooth for tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If someone strikes you on the right cheek, turn to him the other also. And if someone wants to sue you and take your tunic, let him have your cloak as well. If someone forces you to go 1 mile, go with him 2 miles. Go to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be sons of your Father in heaven. He causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? And are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your brothers, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that? Be perfect, therefore, as your heavenly Father is perfect. That's just one of the 3 chapters. One of the 3 chapters. So this is the reality of what Jesus is doing. And to me, this is what sums up, my opinion, Jesus' ministry. So much of his ministry is simply creating a tension, because now that you know about Hillel and Shammai, and you have both ends of the spectrum there, if you notice, the beginning of this message is so profoundly compassionate. And the words are just, blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy, right? The pure in heart, for they will see God. It's just beautiful, kind, compassionate words, right? And then what Jesus is doing as he keeps going is he starts pointing out, taking things to another level. And he wants people to get a sense of the true righteousness of God and a righteous standard of God, which is not just the do's and the don'ts, but is actually introducing the highest possible standard of motivation. Now, ironically, the story about Shammai and Hillel, to some degree, is motivated in their response, you could argue, as I said earlier, is, kind of measuring what is the motivation of this person bringing this silly question to me. And they responded in kind in 2 different respects. The law, the 613 law, ceremonial laws and all, oral tradition, everything else, what Jesus blows up is rubber hits the road motivation. So you think adultery, you think you're killing it. If you're listening to Jesus, you're like, well, I never cheated on my wife. I never cheated on my spouse, my husband, And all of a sudden he's like, yeah, but here's the deal, guys. You know how this works? If you just look at a woman lustfully, well, that's a whole new thing. He's systematically removing the boxes of making loving God and following God simply about outward display, checking the boxes of what it looks like. Am I saying obedience isn't important? It absolutely is important. But that alone is not the full standard of righteousness. And Jesus wants everyone to feel that actually introducing heart and motive, right? There's the connection to the Hillel Shammai story, is way deeper and adds a whole nother level of complexity in simply the weight that they're now all feeling. You know, if you're listening to this, Jesus makes everything from 613 laws down to 2. Love God and love your neighbor. But once Jesus introduces heart and motive, it becomes infinitely more difficult than anything you would have known prior to Jesus's ministry. And it was already really hard. That's one thing. Now just thinking about something is tantamount to adultery? You mean just hating someone is like murder? It wasn't enough that I didn't murder someone? You're telling me that God's standard is not just me not murdering someone? Now it's what is the heart of me wanting to murder someone, but I don't? I'm still off? You see what he's doing? He's helping them understand. You know, you want to play this game? You want to be on this side of the aisle? You want to be on that side of the aisle? You want to have your little whatever, right? You know, okay. Not a single pen stroke of the law is going to be removed. Now he's talking about accomplishing the law, right? So he's that makes more sense to us, you know, with 2,000 years of, you know, retrospect, being able to look at it and see what that means, right? When he says, I have not come to abolish them, but to fulfill them. When he's talking about the law. Well, we know what that means. Not even the disciples understood what that meant up into the point of even Jesus dying. You know, they're still like, what? What does all that mean? But Jesus is ultimately trying to help people understand the true level of righteousness. And that's different than being right. You live in a world that wants to turn right into righteous. And I do believe there is black and white. Don't get it twisted. I'm not Captain relativism, you know. There is right and wrong. But we are also broken people who sometimes exist with broken choices and broken options. And there can be a degree of freedom of acknowledging that you may have made the best possible decision, whatever that is in your life, but it doesn't mean that like it's God honoring. It could still not be the God honoring choice. And as I'm saying that, you're feeling the weight that Jesus is putting on the people and the listeners 2,000 years ago, because they're used to being able to make a decision that outwardly seems like the right decision. And they could then equate their right decision with being a righteous decision. Righteousness is found in Jesus, and in Jesus is right and true forever, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. We make right decisions 90% of the time. Sometimes we get to walk in the waters of, okay, that thing was right yesterday, today, and tomorrow, but rarely. And even if we make the right decision, what Jesus is pulling out is your heart and your motive could still be flawed. You know, so there's the difference, right? So even in us doing the right thing, it's hard to even touch righteousness, because the heart with which you've done it, the motive with which you've done it, may not always be right. Right? If you do something with animus in your heart, or hatred in your heart, or a grudge in your heart, even if you did the right thing, he's saying it's not God's standard. You may have done well for you, right? And so they're all feeling the weight. And what's that about? I mean, even like loving your enemies. What? He's trying to help them see, like, this is what it means. Like, you love your enemy. Well, yeah, but what if a situation is bad with my enemy and I have to act or react? right? Like, what if my enemy breaks into my house? Well, I think you do what you have to do with your enemy. But that doesn't mean that's God's necessarily will. And we don't want to hear that. We just don't want to hear that. We want Rabbi Shammai. I beat the mess out of him, and that's the right answer, But like, this is, I think when we let God be God and we let the righteousness of God be found in the righteousness of Jesus alone, and we stop having to put ourselves in these situations where we can declare ourselves righteous, that is a miserable game. And read 5, 6, and 7. And if you read it with an open mind and open heart, you will discover what the people were probably thinking back then. Oh my goodness, this is mind-blowing. How do I love someone this way, right? But then on the other side, someone else could be going, it's possible for me to be loved this way? What? It's beautiful. It's beautiful. Jesus is trying to get people to recognize that if you want to resolve that which is broken in this life, true resolve, true righteousness, true answers are found in Jesus alone. They're found in Jesus. You want to be righteous? You want to check those boxes and try to make sure your heart and your outward behavior is dead on all the time? Good luck. Good luck. Or you could put your faith and your trust and your identity in Jesus. And you walk with him the best that you can. You trip and you fall. You get up. Humility, obedience, not about how we feel, but what is known and what is true in his word. But not so that we are righteous. We are made righteous because of Jesus Christ. That's what he's trying to pull people away, is to sense the incredibly, impossibly high bar of God. Of God. Because even the Pharisees and the teachers of the law were good up to a point, right? Like, you got to be at, he just told everybody, like, you got to be at their level. And then he expands upon their level, which is even now their thoughts. So he, in effect, nukes everybody. But it's not to be cruel. It's about finding resolve in Jesus. Jesus alone. Faith alone in Jesus. Beautiful gift of God. Grace and mercy given to each and every one of us, found in Jesus. The author and perfecter of your faith. Powerful work of God, pursuing you and loving you to the ends of the earth. That's what it's about. That's what it's about. So as you walk in the mess of your life, whatever that looks like, there is what's true in his word. There is a humble obedience to his word. And we live in broken options many, many times. In a simple faith and trust in him, resolve in our identity and our purpose and our meaning for walking in this life is because of him. And we are free from having to try to be righteous in and of ourselves. And we can truly be present and enjoy the beauty and the good, the bad, and the ugly even. We can traverse that in simple childlike faith because Jesus is with us. Jesus is righteous. And we get to share in that because of him and by him alone. Defeated sin, death, and Satan. Loves you guys so much. Don't ever forget that. Let's pray. Jesus, we just thank you so much for your grace, your mercy, and your kindness. It's new every single day. Resolve, purpose, identity, righteousness. It's all about you. We thank and praise you for your word. We thank and praise you for your insights just in Matthew chapter 5 alone. And just continue to be with each and every one of us that hear your voice. May we never forget that there's always hope in you. There's always a new life in you. There's always redemption and reconciliation in you. We love you so much, Lord. It's in your beautiful name. Amen. Love you guys, and we will be back at it next week. Bye.